The blade sliced through the air, spinning, then plunged sharply toward the ground. Glandulin's aim was unerring, and the axe drove home. Glamdulin groaned as the weapon struck his shoulder, blood spraying from the wound. He stumbled to the ground. Watching from above, Glandulin sent a quick thanks to Vrockus for guiding his blade. His relief was short-lived. Death had come too late to prevent the traitor from achieving his terrible purpose. The final bolt shot back. Slowly, the colossal gateway opened. The vast slabs scraped and dragged across the ground, as though reluctant to obey the treacherous command. There was a grinding noise of stone on stone. The chink became a narrow channel, which widened to fill the breadth of the path. Time slowed to a crawl as the gates swung open. One final creak, and for the first time in creation, the path into Gildegard was clear. "No!" Glandulin stirred from his paralysis and hurtled down the steps to join Giselbert and the remaining warriors defending the gates. He was the last one to take his place in the doorway. Already the others had closed the ranks and were holding their shields in front of their bodies, their axes held aloft. Shoulder to shoulder, they formed a low wall of flesh against the tide of orcs, ogres, trolls, and riders. 40 against 40,000. The enemy hung back, fearing an ambush. Never before had the gates opened to allow their passage. Glandulin's gaze swept the front line of monstrous beasts, shifting back to survey the second, third, fourth, fifth, and countless other grunting rows, all poised for attack. He glowered from under his bushy eyebrows, forehead furrowed into a frown. Giselbert lost no time in reversing the incantation. At the sound of his voice, the gates submitted to his authority, swinging back across the pathway, but moving too slowly to stop the breach. Giselbert strode behind his troops, laying a hand on each shoulder. The gesture was a source of solace as well as strength, calming and rallying the last defenders of the gates. Trumpets blaring, the riders ordered the attack. The orcs and ogres brandished their weapons, shouting to drown out their fear, and the army advanced with thundering steps. "The path is narrow. Meet them line by line and give them a taste of our steel." Glandulin called to his kinsfolk. "Vrockus is with us. We are the children of the smith." "The children of the smith," the fifthlings echoed, feet planted firmly on the rocky ground beneath. 4 dwarves were chosen to form the final line of defense. Throwing down his shield, the king took an axe in each hand and led the surge toward the enemy. The dwarves, all that remained of Giselbert's folk, charged out to slay the invaders. 10 paces beyond the gateway, the armies met. The fifthlings tunneled like moles through the vanguard of orcs. With only one axe, with each to defend himself, Glandulin struck out, slicing through the thick row of legs. He did not stop to kill his victims, knowing that the fallen bodies would hinder the advancing troops. "No one gets past Glandulin," he roared. Stinking blood streamed from his armor and helm, stinging his eyes. When his axe grew heavy, he clasped the weapon with both hands. "No one! Do you hear?" His enemy's bones splintered, splattering him with hot blood. Twice he was grazed by a sword or a spear, but he battled on regardless. The prize was not survival, but the closing of the gates. Gildegard would be safe if they could stave off the invasion until the passageway was sealed. Until this hour, his axe had defended him faithfully, but now the magic of its runes gave out. Glancing to his right, Glandulin saw a comrade topple to the ground, skull sliced in half by an orc's two-handed sword. Seething with hatred and determined to fell the aggressor, Glandulin lunged once, twice, driving his axe into the creature's belly and cleaving it in two. A shadow loomed above him, but by then it was too late. He made a last-ditch attempt to dodge the ogre's sweeping cudgel, but its rounded head swooped down and struck his legs. Bellowing in pain, he toppled against an orc, severing its thigh as he fell. before tumbling onward through the army of legs. He lashed out with his axe until there were no more orcs within reach. "Come here and fight, you cowards!" he snarled. The enemy paid him no attention. Fired by an insatiable hunger, they streamed past him toward the gateway. They had no need of stringy dwarf flesh when there were tastier morsels in Gildegard. Trembling with pain, Glandolin rose upon his elbows. The rest of his kinfolk were dead. Their mutilated bodies were strewn on the ground, surrounded by scores of enemy corpses. The diamonds on Giselbert's belt sparkled in the sunlight, marking the place where the fifthling father had fallen, slain by a trio of ogres. At the sight of him, Glandolin's soul ached with sorrow and pride. The sun rose above the mountains, flooding through the gateway and dazzling Glandolin with its light. He raised his hand to his sensitive eyes, straining to see the gateway. "Praise be to Brockus! The gates were closed!" A blow from behind sent pain searing through his chest. For the duration of a heartbeat, the tip of a spear protruded through his tunic, then withdrew. He slumped, gasping, to the ground. What in the name of... The assassin stepped around his body and knelt beside him. The smooth elven face was framed by fine hair that shimmered in the sunlight like a veil of golden threads. But the vision bore a terrible deformity. 2 fathomless pits stared from almond-shaped holes. The creature wore armor of black metal that reached to its knees. Its legs were clad in leather breeches and dark brown boots. Burgundy gloves protected its fingers from grime, and its right hand clasped a spear whose steel tip, sharp enough to penetrate the fine mesh of dwarven chainmail, was moist with blood. The strange elf spoke to the dwarf. At first the words meant nothing to Glandolin, but their morbid sound filled him with dread. "My friend, look at me. Syntheros is your death." A second voice translated behind him. "I will take your life, and the land will take your soul." Glandolin coughed, blood rushing from his mouth and coursing down his beard. "Get out of my sight, you pointy-eared monster. I want to see the gates," he said gruffly, brandishing his axe to ward away the beast. The weapon almost flew from his grip. His strength was ebbing fast. "Out of my way or I'll cut you in two like a straw, you treacherous elf," he thundered. Syntheros laughed coldly. Raising his spear, he inserted the tip slowly between the tight rings of mail. "You're mistaken, my friend. We are the Alfar, and we have come to slay the elves," the voice said softly. "The gates may be closed, but the power of the land will raise you from the dead, and from that moment on, you will be one of us. You will know the incantation. You will open the door." "Never! My soul belongs to Brockus!" "Your soul belongs to the land, and you will belong to the land until the end of time." The velvety voice cut him short. "Die, so you can return and deliver Gildegard to us." The spear's sharp tip pierced the flesh of the helpless, dying dwarf. Pain stopped his tongue. Syntheros raised the weapon and pushed down gently on the battered body. The final blow was dealt tenderly, almost reverently. The creature waited for death to claim its prey, watching over Glandolin's pain-ravaged features and drinking in the memory. Finally, when he was certain that the last custodian of the gateway had departed, Syntheros left his vigil and rose to his feet.
If you're enjoying this story, please remember to click the like button and subscribe. Also, follow me on Patreon for early access, and if you want extra rewards, join my Patreon Fae Fam. Thanks for listening.